So I arrived with Amber, like I was saying, I arrived with another person coming at the same time. And Holly came and picked us up, and we got some food at a grocery store. And then she helped us do our phone, so get a SIM card and get the phone started so we could feel connected. Something you will learn in Zambia is not everywhere you go is going to have what you want. And so we traveled a lot trying to fix that phone. And I think I saw like 3 malls in a couple hours. And as we were doing that, I was kind of seeing different places that that were around the city. And so that was pretty good to see a bit of the city. I went home, I cooked a dinner, I unpacked, which makes me feel good. And then the next morning I walked to work with Amber, which they had shown us a map and where to go. And we lived really close. And then we pretty much each day we observed. And I think that was a really good way to start, because you want to get to know the people. You want them to know that you're there to support them. You're not there to change everything because you think you're better. And so for the first couple days, I observed a lot what was happening in our resource center, in our community care centers. I got to know our staff. I went out to dinner with Holly and Lauren, and just got used to that routine of I really just like walked to work and I would come back. And maybe we tried walking to the grocery store, which was successful, but in the beginning, in the couple days, we mostly just got used to that, going to work and what work looks like, and then coming back home and unwinding. How did you get your cell phone working? A huge perk of Zambia is your cell phone bill just is not expensive. And so pretty much you get a SIM card that's very cheap, and you put it in your phone, and they give you a Zambian phone number. And then it isn't like AT&T where you pay for a monthly plan. What we would do is you see people everywhere that have a shirt on that says Airtel, and you go up to that person and you give them like 100 kwacha, which is like $7, and they give you a little slip that has a code on it. So you scratch off the gray stuff and you see your code, and then in your phone, if you have Airtel, which is usually what we have, you type in star, let me see if I can remember this, star 575 pound, and you can put in that code, and then, oh, that's wrong. Never mind. What you do is it says on the back, you do star 113 star, and you type in that code, and at the end you put pound, and that gives you the money on your phone. And then once you have the money on your phone, there's different codes you can type if you want, like money for calling people or money for data. But my main thing was data because I could do a lot with it. So for data, after you typed in the code, then you would do star 575 pound, and you would choose your bundle. So if you have this, you should always do it. It's called Ikali Best. It's usually the first option, and they have really good deals. So for like $7, 100 kwacha, I had 15 gigabytes of data for my whole month, and that was more than enough for me. And so in the end, you just don't pay that much for data, and you don't pay that much for calling people and text messages. I think for that one, it's star 140 pound if you want to get a bundle to call. So I always just got a monthly bundle because you usually got the best deal. And then all month you really wouldn't have to worry about it. And then when the month came to the end, you would just go up to another Airtel man, who they are everywhere, and ask for like 100 kwacha of airtime. And then you would do the same thing, scratch it off and put it in your phone. And so people will show you this. Anyone can show you how to do this. But getting your phone working wasn't very hard, and having data also wasn't like expensive. And so I was able to call people and FaceTime and watch Netflix and use my data at work. And you pretty much just hotspot. So I never bought an internet thing. I would just hotspot my phone to my computer, but I had 15 gigabytes of data. So I really barely ever use that up. And so then you just have internet everywhere you go because you can always hotspot your computer to your phone. So that is a perk. I would say here, phone bills are much more expensive. How did you move into your house, and how did you find furniture? So before I came, Holly helped us find a place, and it was fully furnished. Someone else already lived there, and I was just taking that person's spot for a while. But then other than that, I moved probably 5 times when I was in Zambia, just because I wanted to. And I always found a place that was very furnished. And so I think a couple times, like I bought a bed one time, and you'll see on Expat Zambia on Facebook, a lot of people are selling items when they leave. And so you can message and buy that item, and they're usually not that expensive. But also there's a part of the city called Kalingalinga, and they have a lot of wood furniture that also is not expensive. We would usually have one of our Zambian friends help us, because they probably would ask me for a lot more money than they would ask my local Zambian friend. And so they would help, and they would get a better price, and I would buy it. And so there are a lot of beautiful wood furniture. It's actually, I love the wood furniture there. And oh, and then if not, you can ask people when expats are leaving, which a lot of people come and go. So if you have friends, a lot of them are giving away their items. And so that's also a great way. But there's so many resources on Facebook to find things you want, and then also in different areas of the town that people can direct you to find what you want for your house. Is driving different? Yes, driving is different. You drive on the other side of the road and in the other side of the car. And there are stick shift, there are manual cars, and when I moved there, I learned how to drive manual, and it wasn't easy, but I don't think it's easy for anyone. And so I was learning manual and also learning the ways of the road. And so you could learn manual, but there are a lot of automatic cars, and so you don't have to learn how to drive stick. You could easily find a car that's automatic. And so, but some of our Special Hope cars are manual, but usually you wouldn't ever have to drive them because you can have your own automatic car. The roads, so I had this impression that there were no laws on the road, and there was like no control. There are speed limits. They just put in speed cameras a year ago, and they do ticket you, which is not fun. It's only 300 kwacha, but still it's not fun to get ticketed. And there are police, and so being on your phone is very dangerous, and they'll pull you over for it. And you do have to be a bit more of an aggressive driver because you're in the city, and so usually I'm very calm and chilled when I'm driving, but there I would kind of have to see my spot and go into it, or try to kind of nudge closer to a car so that they would let me in. It's not always like that, just depends which part of the city you're driving. There definitely is traffic at certain times of the day, like work times, kind of normal. But if you live close to the resource center, I would recommend that, because you just never have to be in traffic. And I think for 2 years, I never was in traffic, and then I lived farther away and I was in traffic every day, and it is pretty bad traffic. And so driving is different, but it's not something you have to be that worried about. I would just say maintain the speed limit. It is in kilometers, so you get used to that, and you will get used to being on the other side of the road. Yeah. How did you find a car? So at the time I was there, Special Hope were selling cars, and so I had one of those that I rented for a time period. But many of my friends had to buy cars, and same thing, kind of connections, like friends of friends that were selling cars, or going on Expat Zambia and trying to find good deals. There's lots of car dealerships if you have fundraised more and are able to buy a car that isn't that used, but usually we would just find used cars through friends. And there is a process that I'm not familiar with of getting your car, like getting a white book for your car and getting insurance, but there are always people in Zambia that can help you with that. How did you find friends? The main way I found friends was through joining some sports teams. I was never super sporty when I came to Zambia, but our friend Lauren really invited us to come places, and so Gymkhana Club is close to where we work, and there they have frisbee, ultimate frisbee, and touch rugby, which I started playing. I'd never played, but it was so much fun. And they have volleyball sometimes, and they have different events, and that is where I met most of my friends in the beginning. I went there and just met people that were in a similar situation as me. They had just moved here or had lived here their whole life. And so I would say when people invite you to places, I would go. That's a great way to meet friends. People are very welcoming, and I think very wanting to interact and have conversation. It's a beautiful part of the culture of Zambia. And so when people invite you to dinner, when they invite you to Bible study, when they invite you to come to an event, I think as much as comfortable as you are, I would go because you're going to meet a lot of people. I found a great Bible study. I went to a couple churches where I also made a lot of friends, and a lot of it was through doing sports. And then eventually, once you get to know people, you just always get to know more people in different communities, that it's pretty easy to meet new people and get to know them. I would say it takes some time, but this is life, to get on a deeper, like, friendship level, and but everyone is so welcoming, and so I think that's a very natural process of it takes time to feel like you have your very close friends, and that did take me some time, but in between I had met so many people. How did you grocery shop? I went to the mall mostly, and so there are lots of malls and lots of grocery stores that look pretty similar to what we have, and lots of aisles with lots of food, and so you could go to a lot of grocery stores. I really like Pick and Pay and Food Lovers. Oh, ShopRite. ShopRite is a very nice. It's from South Africa, and there's just a lot of good options there that you would want. And so I mostly grocery shop by going to ShopRite, but we have a veg man who he would sell us a pack of vegetables, and he would come to work and drop them off for like $3, 50 kwacha. And in that were a lot of fresh vegetables. So that's another way I did it. And then also in every compound, which is all over the city, so you're always seeing compounds, there's a lot of people selling fruits and vegetables on the side of the road or in the compound. And I did buy a lot of vegetables and fruits from stands that are on the side of the road because it's such good vegetables and fruits. It's also an extremely fair price. It's very inexpensive, especially when the vegetables in season. And so I usually always bought my avocados and bananas and apples and cabbage on the side of the road, and I loved it. And so grocery shopping is pretty fun. I would say you can find most things that you want. And so I'm not a very picky eater, but even some things that I loved from America, like chocolate, you can find chocolate in every grocery store. And so a lot of the things you want are there. They just might be more expensive. And so if you want Pringles, they're a bit more expensive. But if you want apples and cucumbers, they're very cheap. And so it just depends what you prefer. But I would say most of the time when I wanted to make something, or when I wanted to bake something, or I wanted a meal that I had at home, I could find most of those items. I just maybe had to go to a couple different grocery stores or ask people where they had found those things. And there's so many people that can tell you those answers. How did you cook? How did cooking in Zambia compare to cooking in the US? I cooked a lot more than I ever had. You can get a microwave and a toaster, and when I was in America, I cooked a lot in a microwave. But when I moved to Zambia, one of my first places I stayed, they didn't have one. And so I would say cooking isn't that different from America. There's a lot more fresh ingredients. I would say a difference is you don't have as many ready-made, like if you want a frozen bag of vegetables, they're much more expensive than just buying fresh vegetables. And so I think I was challenged in a good way to make more fresh salads and stir fry and things that combined different vegetables. And so cooking I wouldn't say is any different. There's oil, there's pans, there's spices. I just spent more time cooking and a lot more fresh things, and kind of challenged myself to actually try to cook myself meals that were good and healthy. When did it start feeling like home? If ever, the new normal, if not. For me, it felt like home pretty quickly. I think I transitioned well. I met great people. I loved where we work. And so I think after a couple months, I felt very comfortable. But then I would maybe say after 6 months, when I created deeper relationships with the teachers and with friends, and knew my schedule of going to this grocery store and going to this movie theater and going to this park to walk, it felt much more like home. And so for me, it very quickly felt like home, and still is a home of mine that I love. And so I think in the beginning, it took me time. Like, I met a lot of people, but it took me time to find good friends. And then even with teachers, relationships took time to grow, because I think mostly because I didn't step out as much. And so I think once I felt very comfortable at work and I knew what I was doing and I knew the people and I had friends and I knew my routine, it felt like home because it's a great place to live.